I never thought a 9 a.m. phone call could completely change the way I see the world. Stephen, get to my office, now. His voice was ice cold, without a shred of courtesy. I got up from my desk, heart pounding, but kept a calm face. No one said anything as I walked through the 12th floor hallway. Only Ashley, the secretary, looked at me silently, as if she already knew what was about to happen. His office door was open, I stepped in, and the door slammed shut behind me like a final verdict. There he was. Rick Halverson, the new CEO, who had been in charge for less than 8 months, sitting comfortably behind his desk, spinning a silver fountain pen like he was toying with someone's fate. We're done. Just 3 words. No explanation, no small talk, no hesitation. I froze. Excuse me? What do you mean? He pushed a thin folder toward me. Your contract ends today. No renewal. Pack your stuff and don't reach out. I opened the contract. It was the same one I'd signed earlier this year. I remembered it. It was almost identical to the old ones I'd signed over more than 10 years at this company, except for a few minor changes regarding the legal representative. I hadn't read every line carefully. Wait, what about severance? I clearly remember that being part of the previous contracts. Rick gave a smug chuckle. You really think I'd waste money on outdated ideas like loyalty? You signed the contract without reading it thoroughly. That's on you. I quickly flipped to the last page, where the severance clause used to be, but found only one cold line. No severance shall be provided upon contract termination. My heart sank. I tried to keep my voice steady. But I've worked here for nearly a third of my life. I designed the entire internal management system and kept it running. This isn't fair. Rick squinted. Take it to court if you want, but the law is the law. You signed it. I felt my face flush. I couldn't believe how indifferent he was, as if everything I'd contributed was just invisible numbers. I swallowed the anger burning in my throat. So, you're firing me with no reason, no notice, and not a single dime in support? Rick stood up, walked closer, and leaned in as if to make sure I heard every word. You don't have a college degree. You're just a 47-year-old guy without a single certificate living off self-taught hacks. I need educated people, people with networks, not some self-declared engineer like you. I'm full of drinks. I didn't reply. I just stared at him, partly in shock, partly because I knew if I opened my mouth, I wouldn't be able to hold back. Rick patted my shoulder, like I was a character being removed from a simulation game. Relax, next time read before you sign. Oh, and by the way, the elevator's waiting. I walked out of his office with the termination letter in my hand and a searing sense of humiliation in my chest. No one said a word when I returned to my desk. They knew. They all knew. I packed my things into the same old leather backpack I'd had since my internship, back when Timothy, my former boss, first hired me at the age of 20. I was the one who built the financial management system, the HR system, the entire data platform for dozens of branches across Oregon. I knew every line of code running underneath it. I knew I no longer belonged here, at least not under someone like Rick, but I also knew he had no idea what he'd just messed with. I left the building late that afternoon. The sky was gray and heavy, just like my heart. I sat on a park bench a few blocks away from the office, opened my laptop. Not to cry, not to write a new resume, but to log into the last system I had managed, the one Rick had never asked me how to operate, never requested an official handover for. I didn't want revenge, but I wasn't going to leave like a ghost. When Rick disrespected me, he didn't just fire an employee. He fired the only person who knew how to keep the company from collapsing in 72 hours. I placed my fingers on the keyboard and took a deep breath. No more anger, no more pain. Only one cold question remained in my mind. You want to play, Rick? Then let me show you how the real game begins. I used to think, if life were a race, I started when others were already halfway around the track. My mom gave birth to me in 1977 in a small town in Missouri. My dad left when I was in 7th grade, took every dollar in the account, and left my mom and me with a mortgaged house and a mountain of bills. I still remember that day. My mom sat silently in the armchair, clutching the divorce papers. while I stood frozen in the corner of the room. And she didn't cry. But from that day on, I never saw her smile again. After the divorce, she worked 3 jobs, waitressing during the day, answering phones at night, and cleaning offices on weekends. She never complained, but every night I saw her back hunch a little more. That's why I made a promise to myself: grow up faster than anyone else. I started working at 14. Diner help, typing invoices, cleaning pharmacy windows. Every penny I earned, I shoved into an old tin box under my bed. That was my college fund, the dream I held through all of high school. But then Mom got sick. Uterine fibroids, no insurance, no money for surgery. When I graduated, I faced 2 choices: go to college and watch my mom waste away, or start working immediately to carry both of us. I didn't hesitate. College could wait. Mom couldn't. I applied to every place hiring tech staff without a degree. A printer repair shop called me first. I sat across from the owner, shaking so much I nearly spilled his coffee. "You know how to install drivers?" "Yes, sir." "Basic programming?" I'm learning." I lied. But it was kind of true. I had borrowed Learn C in 21 days from the local library, and I was on day 3. He gave me a 2-week trial. I turned the repair shop into a night school. I stayed late, took apart every machine, learned every line of code, every command structure. 3 months in, I was hired full-time. Soon, I became the only person who could restore entire office print systems within 24 hours. Then came freelance projects, Excel macros, email automation scripts. No mentors. I learned from forums, blurry YouTube videos, and messy lines of code I had to trial and error all night just to get them to run. One day, I got an email from someone named Timothy Banks, CTO, of a new software company in Portland. "Mark, my old boss, recommended you. Free for coffee?" That meeting changed everything. Timothy didn't ask what school I graduated from. He only asked, "Ever managed a real server?" I have a $5.00/month VPS running 3 small client projects. You understand permission systems? I built a custom access control system for a marketing firm. In PHP? Timothy nodded. That was it. A week later, I got an offer to be a contract back-end engineer. Salary, $45,000, 0 cents per year? To me, that was massive. I signed without hesitation. I started the new job with trembling hands and a constant fear of being found out as a fraud. All my co-workers had degrees: Stanford, UC Berkeley, MIT. I just had a rusty tin box that once held a college dream. Whenever they talked about thesis projects, professors, or internships at Google, I stayed silent. I didn't know how to write a proposal. I only knew how to make a script run right, without crashing the entire system. I worked twice as hard as they did, got home at 8 p.m., studied until 1 in the morning. I rewrote the entire internal database library to make it run 30% faster. I learned Docker even before the main engineering team officially adopted it. And I remember very clearly the first night I was given a real project: managing customer data for an e-commerce platform. Timothy called me into his office. "Stephen, this is your project. Do well." I didn't sleep for the first 3 days. But that project ran smoothly for 6 years. Until the day Rick kicked me out the door. They said I didn't have a degree. But no one remembered that I was the one who built their payment system back when the company only had 12 employees. No one remembered I was the one who discovered the security vulnerability in 2015, saving them from a breach involving 10,000 customers. No one remembered, or bothered to remember, that if it hadn't been for me, they would have collapsed long ago. And that's why, when I logged into the system from my old laptop in my tiny apartment, I didn't feel guilty. I felt one thing only: justice needs memory. If Mark was the one who handed me the first key into the tech world, then Timothy was the only one brave enough to open the door while I was still covered in dust. The first time I met him was in the break room on the 11th floor. The coffee machine was sputtering, and I was clumsily spilling sugar all over the counter. "Sugar goes in the cup, not on the table, buddy," a deep voice said behind me. I turned around, face flushed red. "Sorry, I just started. Today's my first day." He smiled and reached out his hand. Timothy Carter, sales department. I heard about you from Mark. Looks like you're learning how to destroy the break room, huh? I laughed. For the first time in weeks, someone didn't look at me like a degreeless nobody. From that day on, every Monday morning, we'd run into each other by the coffee machine. No deep conversations, just a few casual remarks about the weather, gas prices, or baseball. But Timothy's eyes were always warm, never judgmental. One afternoon in March, I got an email from him. Free after hours? I'd like to buy you a drink. I thought I had messed something up, but when we sat down at a small bar near the office, Timothy ordered 2 bourbons and spoke like we'd known each other for 10 years. Do you know why Mark referred you to me? I shook my head. Because you've done more than most MBA grads I've ever hired. I was stunned. Timothy wasn't the kind of guy who gave compliments lightly. He continued, his voice calm and deliberate. You may not have a degree, but you have the mind of a real engineer. You work like you're trying to prove something, but the truth is, you don't need to prove anything anymore. That night, I walked home through rain-soaked streets, feeling like someone had just lit a lantern inside me. Not because of the compliment, but because, for the first time, someone truly believed in me. From then on, Timothy wasn't just a friend. He was the one who pulled me out from the invisible walls that degrees had built around me. He introduced me to potential clients, he let me join project meetings I had no official right to be in, and most importantly, he listened when I proposed technical solutions. Something many people in the company never bothered to do. One day, I was neck deep in a broken CRM system when Timothy walked into my office holding 2 hot coffees. You ready? I frowned. Ready for what? My personal project. I'm quitting. I nearly spilled my coffee. Quitting? What? Yep, I'm about to launch an e-commerce company on my own, but you're the VP of sales. Exactly why I need to start over. And I want you to come with me. I was speechless. Timothy could have chosen anyone, a team of engineers from major firms, people with prestigious degrees. But he chose me. Someone who learned to code from a borrowed library book. I've never done a startup. I'm not sure I'm good enough. Timothy shrugged. I don't need you to be the CEO. I need someone who can turn ideas into actual systems, and I know exactly who does that best. I turned him down at the time. I still had a contract, fear, and financial obligations. But that wasn't the end of the story. 2 years later, when I left the company and started building a small software studio out of my living room, the first email I received was from Timothy. Remember my offer? It's time. He didn't hire me as an employee. He hired me as a system development partner. Our first project was building the entire backend for a new retail website called GearNest. I had no team, just me. But Timothy didn't doubt me once. You can do it on your own. I don't need anyone else. I worked like a madman. Coded all night, tested every weekend. When GearNest's first system launched flawlessly, I got a 1-line email. I was right. Then came a handshake, a new contract, and an unshakable friendship. I used to think my worth was in the lines of code I wrote, but Timothy showed me that sometimes your value lies in the trust someone places in you. No titles, no conditions. I've met a lot of people in life. But without Timothy, there may have never been a Stephen who dared to step out from the shadow labeled no degree. When I officially resigned from the old company at age 42, no one clapped. No farewell party, no goodbye email, just a deactivated access badge and a worn-out laptop bag walking out of a building I had been tied to for almost 2 decades. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I just felt light. Light, like I had finally removed an invisible chain I'd worn for years. The chain called safety and stability. 3 days later, I registered a business license with a simple name, Stonebite Systems. No office, no employees, no fancy logo or flashy marketing plans. Just me, a laptop, an old printer, and one promise to myself. Never again work for anyone who doesn't respect true human value. Timothy was my first client. No haggling, no back and forth. He sent an email with the subject line, "Ready to build?" and attached a contract with a fee 3 times the market rate. I almost called him to lower the price, but he just texted, "I'm not buying code, I'm paying for trust." The Gear Nest project was a huge success. The website loaded in under zero point 0.8 seconds, and the backend system had virtually zero downtime in the first 6 months. After that, Timothy came back with another request: integrate his entire logistics system into a new automation platform. I worked day and night. Every line of code wasn't about KPIs or deadlines anymore. It was about knowing that if I failed, no one else would take the hit for me. That feeling, half fear, half thrill, kept me awake until 3 a.m. for months. But it also turned me into someone entirely new. A year later, Stonebite Systems had 6 more clients, all referrals from Timothy. No departments, no sales team, no account manager, just product quality is the only advertisement. When a startup in San Diego called and the CTO asked over Zoom, "Are you the guy who built GearNest's system?" I just smiled. You could say that. We analyze their access logs. It runs so smooth it's infuriating. We want something just like it. I took the project, then another, and another. But I always stuck to one rule: never take a job just for the money if I don't trust the client. I turned down offers from big companies even when they offered double the rate. I'd seen enough people like Rick Halverson, guys who think they're the center of the universe because of an MBA and a few LinkedIn articles. I had no patience left for them. With Timothy, it was different. Even as his company grew larger, he remained the same, honest, straightforward, and never once looked down on anyone. One time, Timothy invited me to attend an investment strategy expansion meeting. When I walked into the room, a few people turned and frowned. A woman in an Armani suit asked bluntly, "Is this the in-house engineer?" Timothy smiled. "No, this is the person who built the entire system that keeps this company running today. Without him, we would have collapsed back in 2017. I didn't say anything. I just looked at Timothy and nodded. Some introductions don't need embellishment, because the truth is already powerful enough. A few months later, he came to see me again, this time on a late evening. "I know you're busy," he said, "but I need your help with something." I closed my laptop and tilted my head. "What is it?" "I want you to retrain my new engineering team. From scratch, the way you learned." I stayed silent. Not because I didn't want to, but because I never thought the day would come when someone would ask me to pass on the life experience I had learned through blood, sleepless nights, and the fear of being called not educated enough. "I'm not good at teaching." "You don't have to teach, just be yourself." I agreed, and I started writing my first documentation not to convince clients, but to pass down how I survived in a world that didn't make space for people like me. 3 years in, Stonebite Systems still had no headquarters. I worked out of a third-floor apartment on Portland's east side, with a view of the St. John's Bridge and the sound of train horns echoing each afternoon. But the company now had 2 partners, young engineers I once trained, and enough revenue that I no longer had to check gas prices every time I filled up. I still collaborated with Timothy, not just for friendship, but because I knew, in a world that was becoming more and more pragmatic, someone who still valued capability over degrees was rare and precious. I never thought I'd return to that building, the one I'd spent my youth in, this time as an outside contractor. And I definitely didn't expect that return to mark what I would call the most blatant humiliation of my career. Timothy had temporarily stepped down as CEO, passing the role to Charles Turner, the VP of Finance, known for his rigid admin style that most people avoided. Timothy explained, simply, "We need someone steady during the transition." I had no reason to doubt him. Timothy had never misjudged someone before. But this time, he was wrong. From the very first day Charles took office, the company's atmosphere shifted. Morning meetings lost their laughter. The hallway walls, once decorated with feel-good Friday posters, were stripped bare. In the first week, Charles sent out an email with the cold subject line, "Review all outsourced contracts and implement maximum budget cuts." 3 weeks later, I received a notice. Stonebite Systems' maintenance contract would not be renewed after this quarter. No explanation, no thank you, not a single line of performance feedback. I wasn't surprised. But what happened next truly made my blood boil. One Thursday afternoon, Charles suddenly summoned me to his office. No chair offered, no water, just him leaning against his desk, eyes cold as steel. "Stephen, since the legacy system hasn't been formally handed over yet, I'll need you to remain for a few weeks, but due to budget constraints, I'll be reallocating duties. You'll temporarily assist ground-level logistics." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Clean the tech floor, ensure the restrooms are tidy, and handle relocation requests for equipment if needed. Just temporarily." I thought I misheard. Me, the person who wrote the company's core operational system, was now being told to clean toilets? Are you serious? "You're a contractor, not an employee. During contract closeout, I have the right to reassign you." I looked him straight in the eyes. "Don't you think that's humiliating?" Charles smirked. "You never went to college, right? Then I suppose manual labor might be more fitting." My blood was boiling, but I stayed calm. I knew at that moment I couldn't cut ties immediately. I nodded. "Very well. I'll do exactly what you've requested." That evening, I stood in front of the mirror in the first-floor restroom, mop in hand, sweat clinging to the back of my neck, feeling hollow. I overheard two junior employees walking down the hall, whispering, "Wasn't he the guy who built the customer management system?" "Yeah, now he's mopping toilets." I wasn't ashamed. I didn't do anything wrong. The one who should be ashamed was Charles. But Charles didn't stop there. The following week, he sent an internal email, CC'd to all staff, saying, "Some contractors have failed to meet technical expectations and are temporarily reassigned to support operations." A passive-aggressive way to publicly embarrass me. I didn't respond. I kept cleaning, I reorganized the parts storage, I audited leftover equipment, I stayed silent, like a blade being sharpened. I still logged into the system every night, the very system this company still depended on to survive, yet no one asked me about the transition protocol. No one, not even Charles, knew that my root access was still fully intact. And no one knew I was documenting every one of his misconducts. I began uncovering emails Charles sent to investors, emails filled with inflated revenue claims and cost cuts through system optimization he had never touched. I saved them, every line. I also discovered that he had secretly signed a deal with another maintenance vendor, one who charged 40% less than me but had no experience with the legacy backend system. During one of their test transitions, the system froze for nearly 6 hours. Charles blamed me. The old design was too convoluted. I simply replied, "That's odd. It ran for 5 years without a single minute of downtime. Funny how it's suddenly convoluted now." Those words made his face go pale, but he couldn't refute them. I knew the timing wasn't right, but I also knew when it was right, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. All I'd need was to hit enter. I left the company on June 30th, just as my contract stated. No words, no looking back. Charles didn't see me off, of course not. None of the executives called to say thanks. To them, I was just another name crossed out on a quarterly budget spreadsheet. But what they forgot, or never knew, was that the system they were still using was maintained by me every single day. And the deepest access, root access, was never handed over. Because no one asked. That evening, I sat in my small apartment in Portland, opened the ThinkPad that had carried me through over a decade, and typed the first command. Not to destroy. Not to sabotage. But to redraw the boundary. I terminated internal sessions, disabled the cron jobs that processed recurring invoices, and placed the entire order management system in maintenance mode. A message appeared on every employee's screen. "System temporarily under maintenance for security review. All access is restricted. Please contact the system administrator." Immediately after, I sent an automated email to the accounting, HR, and technical departments. As the contract between Stonebite Systems and the company has ended, all system access has been revoked, per data safety regulations. Please direct any further inquiries through official legal channels. I shut the laptop, poured myself a cup of coffee, and waited. The next morning, 7:13 a.m., my phone buzzed 3 times, unknown number, but I knew who it was. I answered, "Stephen speaking." "Are you insane?" Charles' voice nearly exploded in my ear. "Sorry, who's this?" This is Charles Turner. Why isn't the system working? The morning meeting's interrupted. No one can access CRM. What the hell did you do to my system? I let out a soft chuckle. You sure about that? I remember you said I no longer had any connection to the company. Don't mess with me, Stephen. Turn it back on, or I'll sue you. I took a sip of coffee and responded in the slowest voice I could manage. I have no contract, no obligation. As for suing, go ahead. I've documented all communications and clearly noted that the system halt was due to unsecured handover. The line was quiet for a few seconds. Then he replied, his voice smaller but still bitter. How much do you want to turn it back on? It's not about money. I want you to understand. People who disrespect others' work will eventually pay the price. I hung up. An hour later, my inbox was flooded with emails from former coworkers, some begging for help, some thanking me for giving him a lesson, and some simply writing, "You did what we didn't dare to. Thank you." By noon, I got the second call. This time it was Timothy. "Stephen," he said, calm but serious, "I just heard what happened from the inside. What are you doing?" I locked the system, didn't delete anything, but I won't let him use it like I'm some kind of fool. I understand, and I don't blame you, but are you sure this is the best way? I stayed silent for a few seconds. Tim, you once said value lies in trust. I gave them trust. They crushed it. You're right, but let me handle the rest. I agreed to meet him in the company lobby that afternoon. When I arrived, Timothy was already waiting at the door, gray suit, face cold as stone. "Come upstairs. I need you to witness something." We walked into the executive conference room. Charles was there, uneasy, sweat forming on his forehead. "Sit down," Timothy said. "We need to have a clear conversation." I said nothing, just looked at Charles, clearly bracing for the fallout. "You thought you could fire the one person who understands the core system of this company and walk away clean?" Timothy asked directly. I didn't think it would go this far." "No, you didn't think at all. And now you're going to face the consequences." Timothy turned to me. "What do you want, Stephen?" I stared at Charles for a long moment, then answered. "I want the system to be transitioned properly. I want him to apologize. Publicly. In front of the entire tech team." Charles went pale, but didn't argue. Eventually, he bowed his head and muttered, "I'm sorry." Timothy nodded. "And now you leave the company. Permanently." I restored the system in 15 minutes. Everything was back to normal, as if the chaos had never happened. But the truth was, everything had changed. Timothy didn't get angry often. But when he did, when he really did, everyone in the room could feel the air stop moving. And that afternoon, in the 15th floor boardroom, I witnessed it. Charles Turner stood frozen, like he was trying to digest every word Timothy hurled his way. No one spoke. No one interrupted. The entire room felt frozen in sharp silence. You abused your power, humiliated staff, dismantled company culture, and disrespected the man who laid the foundation for this entire system. Timothy's voice was steady, not loud, but each word struck like a sledgehammer. "Stephen is not just an engineer. He's the reason this company is still standing." Charles tried to stammer something. I just thought, cost-cutting, he wasn't a full-time employee." Timothy raised a hand to stop him. "I don't need your excuses. What I need is accountability." Then he turned to me. "Stephen, I'm sorry. I should never have let him take my place. No one deserves to be treated the way you were." I looked at Timothy, my friend, my former boss, the man who gave me my first chance, and in his eyes I saw real remorse, not performative, not hollow. I nodded. "I don't need anyone to bow, Tim. I just need him gone." Timothy didn't hesitate. "Charles Turner, as of this moment, you are terminated. Effective immediately." The whole room held its breath. Charles was stunned. "You can't do this," he shouted. "I'm the acting executive. The board won't agree with this." Timothy didn't even look back. "I'm the founder, and I'm the one the entire board asked to return as CEO. Did you really think I didn't double-check before making this decision?" Charles stumbled as he backed toward the door, bumped into a chair, and hurried out of the conference room like a defeated man. The door closed, and the room fell into an unfamiliar silence. Timothy exhaled. I hate having to do that, but I couldn't let someone like that destroy everything we built. I sat down, feeling my heartbeat finally slow after weeks of stress. You should know, Timothy said. Ever since you left, everything fell apart. No one on the tech team could handle system-level issues. Reports were delayed, invoices were messed up. I thought a degree would be enough. I was wrong. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. You have no idea, he continued. We ran your system for almost 10 years, with only minor patches. Every meeting, I always said, don't mess with something that works. I smiled, and yet they still messed with it. Timothy nodded, sighing. I stepped away from the CEO role for a year to focus on the Texas project. When I came back, the company was a shell, and then I heard what happened to you. He looked me in the eye. I can't change the past, but I want you to know. I've always seen you as the core of this company, no one else. No degree can replace that. My throat tightened. 30 years, from a kid wiping keyboards at an old printer shop in Missouri to this moment. I never thought I'd live to see the day I was recognized, not for a degree, but for who I am. Do you want to come back? Timothy asked. I shook my head. I have Stonebite, and I'm free. He nodded. I understand, but I still want to work with you, like we did in the beginning, not as a contractor, as a strategic partner. I was silent for a few seconds, then reached out my hand. We shook hands firmly, like two men who had just walked out of a storm, returning to the foundation they once laid together. After that day, news of Charles's dismissal spread like wildfire. People were buzzing. Industry journals started asking questions. Companies that once looked down on me were now emailing to discuss partnerships. I didn't respond. I just wrote one short line on LinkedIn. Never underestimate the one quietly keeping everything running. We didn't start from the beginning. We started from the broken pieces, but this time rebuilt with stone, not flimsy plywood someone could sweep away with a single, no degree, huh? Stonebite Systems still operated out of the same old apartment in East Portland, but now with a small satellite office run by the two engineers I had once mentored. Both had dropped out of college to pursue their passion for coding. Like me back then, they had no paper credentials, only the grit to sit for 8 straight hours debugging a logic flaw without a single complaint. I didn't need degrees from them. I needed work ethic and kindness. I taught them not just coding, but how to see the world through lines of logic. That not every block of working code deserves to stay, and not everyone who talks deserves your trust. As for Timothy, our relationship was now one of equals. He was no longer just the executive chairman, he was the mind behind a series of new initiatives to restore the company culture Charles had once suffocated. One morning, he invited me to the main office, newly renovated after 3 months of rebuilding. The walls were lined with black and white photos, pictures of the early engineering team, including me, with dark hair, holding the first system diagram of GearNest. Below it was an engraved line of text. They didn't need a degree to prove their worth, because they were the foundation of it. I stood there for a long time, not out of nostalgia, but because I knew we had finally reclaimed the right to be seen for the effort we gave. Stephen, Timothy approached, holding 2 cups of coffee. You once said you didn't want to be an employee again. So what if I said, I need your help choosing my successor? I turned to him. You planning to step down? Not exactly, but I want the next generation to be led by someone who understands the roots, not someone with just an MBA and a knack for reading slides. I nodded. I'll help, but on one condition. Name it. Don't ever let someone like Charles sit in that seat again. Not for money, not for connections. Only choose someone who respects people. Timothy smiled. We see eye to eye. That December, I was invited to speak at a tech seminar at Portland Tech University. I walked on stage with no fancy suit, no nameplate boasting some high-ranking title, just a man who had spent 3 decades in tech without ever owning a college diploma. The room was silent as I began telling my story. From a kid who dropped out, to care for his sick mother, to the man who quietly ran the entire back end of one of the largest e-commerce platforms in the Pacific Northwest. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I talked about the ridicule, the sleepless nights over bugs that wouldn't fix, and the moments I nearly gave up just because of one unfair judgment. Then I closed with this. I'm not here to tell you to drop out. I'm here to say your true value isn't in a piece of paper. It's in what you're willing to sacrifice to learn, to work, and to uphold professional integrity. A degree is a path, but it's not the only path, and it absolutely does not define who you are. As I stepped off stage, a student stood waiting near the exit, eyes red. "Sir," he said, "I got dismissed last year for failing credits. I thought I was done, but today, you made me believe I still matter." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not done, you're just on a different road. As long as you don't give up, there's always a way forward." 47 years old. I'm not as wealthy as people often imagine a tech company owner to be. I don't own a mansion, I don't drive a Tesla, and I don't have a skyscraper office in Manhattan. But I have something not everyone manages to keep after all those years in the grind. Self-respect, kindness, and friends who never turned their backs on me. I've been cornered, underestimated, and kicked out of a company like a nobody. But I didn't fall. I stood up and rewrote my own story, line by line, just like I once wrote the first lines of code for those early systems. And if someone asked me, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned?" I would answer without hesitation, "Never let anyone tell you that you're not good enough just because you don't have the degree they want to see. You are not a number on a resume. You are what you choose not to give up." Stephen's story is clear proof that human worth doesn't lie in degrees or titles, but in perseverance, honesty, and the ability to rise through adversity. He didn't just build his career from nothing, he maintained his dignity even when disrespected and treated unfairly. In a world obsessed with surface-level achievements, Stephen chose the longer path, but it was that very path that earned him the truest kind of recognition, from those who once doubted him and those who always believed. What do you think about Stephen's journey and the way he confronted injustice? Do you believe a degree truly defines a person's value? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.